Hello there, everyone, and welcome to a new idea here on the Four Lads podcast. We are going to attempt to look back in Rangers history on a weekly basis on a programme we are going to call This Week in History. This is the pilot show. It would be great to get your comments on it before it starts going out on a regular basis. And my first guest on the pilot show, it couldn't be anyone else. It has to be the boss himself. Mr. Clifford, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm excited. A good idea. You've had this for a while. So it's just like a bonus show for people, which I hope they enjoy, and a good chance for us to dip our toes into the old nostalgia of the football club, Davie. So you being a very well-educated man, I'm looking forward to it. And my memory isn't too bad when it comes to the old Ted. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that some of it should bring back memories. Some of it will probably before your time, and you might have read about it, I suppose. Another thing I want to say right at the start is I'm not just going to do good stuff all the time. I think if you're going to talk about a football club that's lasted over 150 years, there's the occasional heartache, there's the occasional failure, and I think they form part of the same tapestry as the successes do. So I'll concentrate mainly on the good days, but you might see me throwing in the odd one. So the first show is going out on May the 14th, Thursday, May the 14th. And May the 14th, you can only start one place. I don't know if that date actually strikes a chord with you straight away, because it strikes a chord with me straight away. May the 14th, 2008 is where we're going to start. Rangers took the largest travelling support in the history of European football to a football match, which took place in Manchester, the UEFA Cup final against Zenit St. Petersburg, the Advocates at Zenit St. Petersburg. What do you remember of that day before I talk about
it? Stayed in Blackpool with my aunt, and my mate Cammy came with us. We then took an early bus over from Blackpool to Manchester, where we sat and drank most of the day in a Manchester Square, met up with Ross and Bob and a couple other people that we knew, and went to the game. What do I remember from it? Quite vividly, I remember walking up to the Etihad. I remember Foo Fighters playing before it. I remember everything about it. I remember that feeling when they scored both goals. So yeah, I remember, I think it was a wee bit of disappointment in the selection that Novo hadn't started, because Novo, I think against Dundee United a couple of days before, in that 3-1 game, had scored a couple of terrific goals.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was the one to start, but he didn't. Boyd was on the bench as well. Kuzan was obviously a huge miss as well. And we were yet to sign Kenny Miller, who would have made such a difference up front as well. But I just remember Zenit being too strong, and Rangers just, it was a bridge too far from them. They had the chance at the end, I think, that skied over the bar, a kind of half volley. I remember that vividly. But apart from that, just utter heartbreak and disappointment, thinking it was probably the only time that would ever be a European final to watch Rangers. Turns out it wasn't. But so proud of them. But yeah, ultimately a really tough, heartbreaking one. The Scottish Cup final a couple of days later was just so difficult as well. But aye, Davie, I mean, pleased I was at it. Got to watch my team in the European final. But ultimately never watched it again, never kind of spent any time thinking about it. It's about winning. We didn't win. It's parked and we move on.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with most of that. I think my personal memory of it is that I managed to sit beside my late father and my son, and I never ever thought I'd been able to be a European final with my dad and my son all at the same time. So despite how the day went, despite the result, despite everything else, it's still a day that I look back on with incredible fondness. And we took pictures of the day with an old phone that I had, and then I lost the bloody phone. I've not even got a picture of it anymore. It's just all up here. But I think the big memory for me in 2008 was the way the season ended. You talked there about the cup final, but the fixture pile was just ridiculous. It was absolutely scandalous, and it's probably one of the things that got me most angry in my entire Rangers supporting life was the lack of support Rangers got from the Scottish football authorities, considering we were representing Scotland in a European final. It was absolutely horrendous. But when it comes to the game itself, we came up against a team who I think just were that bit better than we were, and unlike Seville. Because like you, I was also in Seville. Unlike Seville, it'll haunt me to my dying day we didn't win that game. It doesn't really haunt me as much, Manchester, because I just think they were just a bit too good, in all honesty.
Zenit were class, weren't they? Had Arshavin in that, didn't they, as well? So they were just too good.
They were a top team. They were a top team. And I think you're right about Kuzan. And later on in this episode, I'm going to talk about another Rangers centre forward missing a big game, and I think he would have made a difference. But I just don't know if we'd have beat them even with him, if I'm absolutely honest about it. But anyway, May the 14th, 2008, a starting point, a European final. The first time any Scottish team got to a fourth European final, and we've been to 5 now, which is as many as every other Scottish club put together. So it's still something to be proud of, even if we didn't get it slightly over the line. And there's some people who would say it was maybe Walter's greatest achievement in getting that team to a European final. There's an argument in that. So if that was not one of our better memories, if you like, in terms of winning something, May the 15th, I'm going to fast forward just 3 years. May the 15th, 2011, Rugby Park, Kilmarnock. Kilmarnock 1, Rangers 5. Walter Smith's last game as Rangers manager. A win needed to win 3 in a row. What a day! And as Mrs. Heard would probably testify, 7 minutes is as long as it needed, because 7 minutes it was all over.
I think 7 minutes is your boasting, Davie. But so I was working that day until 12, and it kicked off at 12. So I got in the house. I got away slightly early, so I got in the house with about 5 minutes to spare. Cammie's house again. We had a bottle of vodka, and we had a very big carry-out. And we said we won't open the vodka until we're okay. I think there was a game on after. I think Aston Villa played Arsenal or something. And we had beers and things to have throughout the day. And we said we won't open this vodka until things, we were settled and we could enjoy it. It was open after 5 minutes. I just remember Rangers starting like an absolute, hellfire. It felt like head tennis backwards and forwards, and then it goes on. Big Laugh finishes it superbly. Then Stevie Naismith, who at that time was one of my favourite players. I just thought Naismith was terrific for Rangers, finishes brilliantly. And then Jelavic lays it on for Lafferty to get another one for the third, and before you knew it. And then what was great about that when you were watching the highlights is that it went over to Parkhead, and I don't think they had started, or it went over to the dugout when we were 3-0 up, and you seen the reaction. The crowd was silent, and it was a joy to behold. Of course, wanted more goals, and of course I do, always do that, but it was a brilliant way. It was such a good celebration. Jelovic's 4th, Lafferty's 5th for his hat-trick. And yeah, it was what a day it was. Perfect, I think, perfect fitting way to do it. But that 7 minutes at Rugby Park, I've watched that quite a few times, how the league was won in 7 minutes. And it's incredible. It doesn't feel like 7 minutes. And a lot of my kind of favourite, I really liked Greg Wild at that time, and he had such a big part in the second goal. Greg Wild had a really positive influence because Rangers were quite stuffy that season, but his pace brought us something that we didn't have. And, looking back on it, Celtic were relentless up until that point. They had Hooper and Wanyama and all these players that were playing really well for them. I think maybe they had Van Dijk. I can't quite remember if he was in that team.
I don't think so.
Maybe he had moved on. I'm not sure, but they had a big solid team, and they went to Inverness that night. And I remember getting ready to go out for night shift. It was a Wednesday night, and I flicked it on. It was 3-1 after 60 minutes. And even at the point of 3-1, if you remember, they scored a late goal, and then I think they had a penalty shout for 3 each, which is why Lennon kicks the water bottles in that very famous gift. So they had Chris Commons and stuff like that. Hooper, they had a lot of goals on their side. And Rangers to go and win that the way they did, and to beat them in the League Cup final as well, was a pretty spectacular day, because Rangers were injury prone that day. I think Whittaker had to play centre half at times. Neil Alexander was in net. That was a very satisfying end to what was a really good season.
And managerial career as well. I think that you talked about the League Cup final. I think the turning point of the season for me was the midweek before the League Cup final, because Kyle Bartley got injured against PSV Eindhoven and missed the rest of the season. And we already had, I think Broadfoot was already injured, and Walter had hardly any fit defenders left. And he had been playing 5 at the back a lot of the time. And we were struggling to score a lot of goals, let's put it that way. And he went 4-4-2 after that. And we started, remember the games towards the end of the season, we were absolutely banging them in for fun. We scored, was it 4 against Hearts, 5 against Motherwell?
Or no against Hearts, 5-0.
His last game against United, we were 2-0 up after about 25 minutes that night as well. We just went for it. Yes, we needed that Inverness result. We needed that because we didn't beat Celtic. It was nothing each. But I thought that when there was a league title there to win, we went out and grabbed it. We went out and took it. And it's a kind of, for me, it's a kind of a history lesson for Rangers teams going forward. And that if you get
what we did this time,
exactly what we didn't do, exactly. And we just went out and took it. My Rugby Park story is that I didn't get a ticket, but because I lived down in Ayrshire, we kept an eye on when Kilmarnock were putting their home tickets out for sale, and I took a morning off work and went to a porter cabin outside Rugby Park and bought 3 tickets. They wouldn't give me any more than 3. I had to show where I lived. I lived in Ayrshire, so they gave me them. So I ended up in the main stand that day. Didn't wear colours. We all saying we better behave ourselves. We don't want kicked out. It lasted. We ended the first goal in about 35 seconds or something. It lasted, and absolutely everybody around about us were all Rangers supporters. We're all dancing about, and from then on it was just a party for 90 minutes. It was absolutely brilliant. What a way for it to end. And I suppose the one black spot for that day, if you like, when I look back in
I know what you're going to say,
is that they had the new chairman had just taken over, hadn't he? And he was pictured with the trophy and everything, and then we all know how he turned out. So it was absolutely the end of an era and the beginning of probably the worst time on the pitch that the Rangers have ever had. Coming up,
I'm going to tell a story. Very quickly, people that have used to follow and post on the follow board will know this. We were in a pub, so it was myself, Cammy, Ross, Bob, my mates, and we were in a pub in the Bon Accord, and the Rangers party was in. It was on North Street, so Paul Murray and things were there. Paul Murray told us that night that Rangers would be in administration within 6 months. He told us what Craig White would do, and he said that they were working to stop it, and they had no idea if they could. Now, I went back and I put all this on follow, and the threads will still be there somewhere. SCCJers, myself, Ross, I think was Loudrop 1. And we put it on follow, and we told everybody and warned everybody. And then just before the weekend, before it actually happened, I was contacted again and told this is exactly what's happening. And I put it up on follow, and just about nearly got destroyed. And then sure enough, we all know what happened on the 14th of February. So, Paul Murray, somebody that I've got a lot of time for, somebody it's been very good to me. On a night where we had just won the double and won the league, he sat in a pub and predicted exactly what would happen to Rangers, and the fact that they were all working behind the scenes to try and get it to stop. But this is exactly where the football club were going, what Craig White was doing to them and what he would do to them. And he called it absolutely spot on. We put it all on follow. Mark Dingwall will tell you. And then, it all just unravelled right in front of our eyes. So a very, very sobering experience, because I was completely pissed. I'd been Ibrox and everything that night. And then he told me that, Davie, and I went home stone cold sober, waiting for that and wondering. And then we had a summer where we were linked with 6 million centre back from Anderlecht that never ever got over the line. We were linked with all these big players, and we ended up with Matt Mackay and
Ortiz, Spanish league.
Manuel Ortiz. So that was the beginning of what we all know. But yeah, on that night, Ross will tell you in the Bon Accord, it was a very sobering experience.
Yeah, but it's still a day I look back on with incredible fondness. Maybe because I didn't have that conversation, but Walter getting out a winner. That was the thing for May the 15th, 2011 for me. So May the 16th. This is if you remember this one, I'm going to be so impressed, right? I'm going to go back to 2004. It was the last game of the season. Rangers has won nothing. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And a player played his last game for Rangers that day. He was given the captaincy. It was at Dunfermline, and he gets sent off after half an hour.
Michael Moles.
Correct, Michael Moles.
Yeah.
So Michael Moles played his 146th and final game for Rangers on May the 16th, 2004 at Dunfermline in a 3-2 win. 146 games, 48 goals, 2 league championships, 1 Scottish Cup, 1 League Cup. And a player that every time you talk about him, what you always hear is what might have been if not for that injury, because everybody always says the same thing about him. Favourite Michael Moles memory?
Right, first of all, love Mikey. I've worked with him quite a bit for 5 stars and stuff. He's absolutely incredible. What a great guy, very funny guy. Favourite Michael Moles memory is his turn. I think the way he used to gift. I remember, see the night we beat Parma 2-0 at Ibrox. Rangers were 2-0 up, and Mikey Moles done that turn, and he was away, and he leathered a shot, and it just went over the bar. And it's a weird memory to keep, but I think it was that point I went to myself, we've got a player here. We've got a really special player here. You know that way, like when you first saw Jelic and you thought, right, he's a class above, or you first saw Purcell and you thought he's going to be excellent for us. Because you can always tell, I always say that you can instantly tell a player in a Rangers jersey straight away because they look every bit like a Rangers player. Michael Moles instantly looked, I think his first games against Haka, he got a couple and stuff like that, and you're just thinking, but Parma, he was just all over the place, terrorised them. I need to go back and look, but I'm sure he just skimmed the bar. Buffon was at full stretch with a lightning shot at 2-0, and I thought to myself, yes, we've got a player. 4 goals against Motherwell, against Gorham.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to talk about.
That's probably right up there, but just a joy. He was always smiling, always happy, and capable of brilliance.
Yeah, I must admit, like you, it took only a few minutes of watching him thinking, where the hell's he? Actually, my first thought was, because he was in his mid-20s by the time we signed him. I remember thinking, how has he only been at Utrecht all that time? Why would we not get him for Ajax or PSV or something? How was he doing at one of these little Dutch clubs when he was sensational? My memory of him, my first memory of him was probably, it was at Tynecastle right at the start of that season. We won a game 4-0 there. Claudio Reyes scored a couple of games. But Moles scored for the byline. He was only about a yard off the byline, and he smashed this shot in.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible goal. Yeah, absolutely incredible goal. We'll always talk about that night in Bayern and what could have been, but he's still doing okay. I mean, he won a treble. He won. You know, it's not as if he was, but he never quite had that dynamic turn of pace again that he did before. He still did the turn, but he never got away as easily from the defender afterwards. I always felt.
So there was a point, I think, in that treble winning season, and it was October the 27th, and I'm sure I remember it because It was my birthday. It might have been my 21st birthday. I can't remember. Or I was 20. I can't remember. It was one of these ones. And Moles played at home to Kilmarnock. It was his first start in ages. And he scored the opener. It was the one where Ronald De Boer, I think we won 6-1. It was one where Ronald...
We scored 4 goals in the first half that day, I think, didn't we? Yeah.
Aye, Ronald De Boer done the twist and all that. But Moles scored that day with his turn. He went one way and then went the other way. And Michael Moles, actually, I think Michael Moles in that season scored 15 or so goals. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but you had Lovenkrands, Arveladze, Ronald De Boer, Barry Ferguson, Fernando Rickson, Michael Mole, Canija, all these guys all pitched in with 15 each. Like they were all, you know, I think the top scorer only had 18 or 19, but they were all round about that amounts. And Michael Moles had a heavy influence. Of course, scored against Celtic as well, didn't he, in the 3-2 win a couple of weeks after that game as well. So Michael Moles had a very big influence. Big game player as well. He was, although he had that horrific injury, he still came back and made a significant part in our treble-winning Rangers team. And he really was just what a player. What a player he was.
Oh, I totally agree. So, but as I said, May the 16th, 2004 was his last game. 3-2 at Dunfermline. And because it was an end of season, meaningless affair, because we had already couldn't win anything. I think McLeish made a lot of changes that day. I'm going to read out the team because it was unusual, an unusual team that day.
Didn't Brighton play?
Who?
Tom Brighton. Did Tom Brighton play?
I've not got the substitutes. I think there was a guy called Bob Davidson come on that day. I'm not sure
if yeah. Right, go for it, mate. Sorry.
So obviously Kloss was the goal at the time, but a young Alan McGregor played in goals. The back four was a young Alan Hutton, Zurab Kishnishvili, Morris Ross, and Paolo Vanoli. The midfield was Fernando Rickson, Stephen Hughes, a very young Charlie Adam, and the three up front were Chris Burke, fresh from his appearance in Four Lads, Michael Moles, and a player who scored his first Rangers goal that day, Ross McCormick.
Ross McCormick, yeah.
So I don't know if there's a lesson in there for end of season games about blooding a few youngsters and giving them a chance, because you can see that McLeish done that day. He gave quite a. Now they didn't all make it. They didn't all make it. The likes of Hutton, Adam, McGregor,
McCormick as well. Not at us, but he still had a really good career.
Yeah,
for 10 million, didn't he? At some point, Ross McCormick. I think
he did actually. He done well down the Leeds, didn't he? So maybe there's a slight lesson in there for. In case we ever have any other end of season meaningless matches, that why don't you give a few youngsters a chance, because you never know, you might end up with another Alan Hutton or Alan McGregor in there. So that was May the 16th. You're not going to remember May the 17th, Stevie. I'll tell you just now, because I don't remember May the 17th, right? May the 17th, 1961, Rangers made British football history by becoming the first club side to play in a European final.
Borussia Mönchengladbach?
No, Fiorentina.
Fiorentina, okay.
The 1960-61 season was the first season of the European Cup Winners' Cup. Rangers reached the final. They beat Borussia Mönchengladbach in the quarter-final. They beat Ferencváros first, didn't they? They beat Ferencváros, then Borussia Mönchengladbach. Beat Wolves in that famous semi-final, the one with Wolverhampton Town songs about. Then they played Fiorentina in the final. Fiorentina were one of the top teams in Europe at the time. They weren't Italian champions, which is why they were in the Cup Winners' Cup. But they had reached the European Cup final a couple of years before against Real Madrid, the great Real Madrid team. Anyway, Rangers lost 2-0. And there was a couple of maybe historic things associated with it. And one of them ties in with the Manchester one we just talked about, actually. The Rangers centre-forward at the time was Jimmy Miller, one of the greatest centre-forwards in Rangers history. He was injured and he missed the game.
Yeah.
And every European final Rangers have played since, our first choice centre-forward hasn't been available, with the exception of 1972. Colin Stein was available and we won it. Incredibly, our first choice centre-forward in 1967 was Jim Forrest, who we sold after Berwick, and then we didn't play in the final. Jimmy Miller in 1961, Kuzan in 2008, and Morelos in 2022. There's a centre-forward curse when it comes to European finals. So we had to play without our centre forward, we moved a winger, Alex Scott, to centre forward. Davie Wilson played in the right. We played a reserve left winger called Bobby Hume. We lost 2-0, and it was the only European Winners' Cup final that was played over 2 legs. So we had to then go over to Italy for the second leg afterwards, which we lost 2-1. And probably the incident the final's most famous for happened in the first half when it was 1-0. Rangers were ordered a penalty. The Rangers captain at that time was the great Eric Caldo, left back, the man Alec Ferguson described as the best left back he'd ever seen. Eric Caldo ran up to take it, and the Italian goalkeeper ran off the line, and he was 6 yards. He was actually on the 6-yard line when Caldo struck the penalty. He got so distracted he put the ball past the post. Everybody expected a retake, and the referee pointed for a by kick. So duff refereeing in Europe is not a modern phenomenon. Rangers never recovered from that moment. They struggled the rest of the night. They gave another goal away towards the end, lost 2-0. But from a historical perspective, Rangers became the first team to play in a European final, first British team to play in a European final. And the team from back then is probably mostly forgotten now, but it did have guys like Richie Shearer, Caldo, Jim Baxter, Davie Wilson, Ian McMillan, Ralph Brand, all in it. So it was the guts of the great 1960s team where we're all in it. My dad was there, 80,000 people at Ibrox, total sellout. And I'm told that there's an Italian restaurant down the road from Ibrox that night and it got all its windows put in. Isn't that shocking? So, May the 17th, 1961. I don't expect you to remember too much about that one. And maybe the only other thing I'll say about it is that I talked about Rangers have only had their first choice centre forward in one European final. Rangers have actually never worn their established, recognised kit in any European final. See, if you talk about a royal blue top, white shorts, red and black socks, we've never worn that in any European final. In that first one, we wore blue and white stripes because Fiorentina played in a kind of purple and it clashed too much with blue, so we played in with a away strip. In 1967, when we played Bayern Munich, we played in blue socks. We changed our socks because they wore red socks. 72, at that time we wore red socks with white top back in the early 70s. And then the last two we wore all blue. So continental Europe has never actually seen Rangers in a European final wearing what I would describe as a Rangers strip, which is kind of strange. Okay, let's go. Let's make it a wee bit something more up to date for me anyway. May the 18th. May the 18th is actually Seville, but I'm not going to talk about Seville because I've already done 2 European finals. I'm not doing 3. May the 18th, 1996. Scottish Cup final at Hampden. Rangers 5, Hearts 1. Gordon Durie scored the second half hat-trick to become the one and only Rangers player ever to score 3 goals in a Scottish Cup final. And yet the final isn't called the Gordon Durie final. It's called
Brian Laudrup final.
The Laudrup final. I have never in my life. I was there in 1981 when Davie Cooper absolutely roasted a great Dundee United team in the cup final, and I never thought I would ever see a performance like that Hampden ever again. Laudrup equalled it that day. Laudrup was absolutely unplayable, and he set up all 3 goals for Durie on a plate. I remember thinking that I could have scored a hat-trick that day if I'd played centre forward in the second half because Laudrup he just put them on a plate each time for him. What do you remember of that day? Were you
there? No, so I was only 13 and I'd only started to go to the games on my own from Fort William. So I was at the Aberdeen game where Gascoigne got a hat-trick. And I was at Partick Thistle when we won 5-0, and I was at Motherwell when we won 3-2. Brian Martin scored this incredible 30-yarder on the top corner, and McCoy's got a late winner from a penalty. So they were my kind of games in the run-up. So I didn't get to go to the final because it was deemed that I was too young and they didn't want too much too soon for me as a kid. So I watched it. It was on the Sunday grandstand, the Saturday Cup final grandstand, which I enjoyed thoroughly. I remember Gascoigne went down after about 10 minutes. He was absolutely half by Paul Ritchie, if I remember rightly, and he was running the show, and then he kind of played on, but he wasn't in top form because of that. But Laudrup was just, the first goal was a peach. It was a half volley into that corner.
Yeah.
The second one was Rousset through his legs.
Yeah, that That was the funny day, the funny moment. I mean,
aye, and this is where it gets slightly. There's one I don't remember, but there was one from Jury where Loudrop whips it in from the left, and Jury running across hits it in the volley right into the corner. That was my goal of the day. I thought that was an incredible goal. There was a hat trick one with a header, and I'm missing one. I'm missing one which I can't think of. So I can't think of Jury's other one, but he had the volley and the header into the kind of open goal where he celebrated and kind of twirled round with his arms.
His other one was a kind of tap in. It was quite near in. It was, as I say, putting a plate. He just tapped it in. My abiding memory, actually, it was the first time we won we wore the 9 in a row strip. Remember that season, the season with the round necks. And we brought the one that looks like the France World Cup strip. That's the way I always describe it as. That was the first day we wore that. And Gascoigne had just won all the Player of the Year awards and stuff. And I don't know whether that annoyed Loudrop a wee bit in saying that there's actually 2 superstars in this team, not 1. But whatever, he was absolutely brilliant. What about, if I was to ask you, could you name the Rangers team that day?
Give it a go. I'll give it a go. I'll get a few wrong, but it was Gorham and nets. Cleland.
Yep.
Gough.
Yep.
Brown.
Yep. Remember, we always played 3 centre backs under Walter and that at that time, so there'll be a third centre half.
So it's either Bjorklund or Petric. So it wouldn't have been Bjorklund because he never arrived until that summer. So if it was Gough, Brown, McLaren, was he injured?
McLaren is the answer.
McLaren, okay. And at left back, I want to say Davie Robertson, but was he fit that day? I'm not sure.
He was fit that day because he played.
Right, okay. So your midfield then was Gascoigne, McCall, and Ian Ferguson.
Yep.
And then up front.
There you go, you've got the 11. Told you it was easy.
Well, and not quite as easy as I would have thought, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think the thing that stands out in the current conversations we're having around about Rangers right now, about is there enough captains in the team? Is there enough players who understand the club? Is there enough winners? All that kind of stuff. What you've just rhymed off to is the absolute epitome of all the things that we do not currently have at Rangers for me. Yeah. The spine, leaders, bad losers, all the things we've talked about in the pod so many times. That team, it just plus quality as well. Don't forget how good they are though.
So Gorham, Gough, McLaren, Brown, Ian Ferguson, Stuart McCall, and Loudrop, I suppose, all could have been captains because Loudrop did become the captain, but they could all been. You're probably doing a disservice to Davie Robertson and Alex Cleland and Gascoigne as well, who probably all could have been captains at times as well, but they weren't seen as But the figures we had in that team, you're right. I mean, I remember, was it not? Here's the thing: did Bomber not displace Gordon Petric, who was having a really good season, but Brown ended up playing because of just how good Bomber Brown was? Yeah, at the end of the season. So
I don't know if you remember, that was actually John Brown's last ever game for Rangers.
Yes,
he picked up an injury in the next pre-season, and he never played for us again. What a way to go out, I suppose, when a double at Hampden. But every one of them's a captain. Just about every one of them's a captain. And the guy that wasn't playing because he injured himself in the warm-up that day, he was going to be a substitute anyway. He injured himself, and it ended up Durant get brought in as a substitute instead of him because then it was McCoist. McCoist was another really bad loser. Really, I always thought. I remember talking to Archie Knox, name dropping a little bit. At an event I was at, and somebody asked him at it, who was the hardest player in it? See that Rangers team, who was the hardest player in it? And everybody thought he was going to say John, but he actually said McCoist. McCoist was the one that he fell out with everybody in training. There was no such thing as a training session for him. It was like a game every time, and he absolutely hated losing. And I thought that was really interesting because nobody would really have thought of that. Cheeky chappy, smiling all the time, but apparently he's balls of steel as well. Right, so that was May the 18th. Happier memory. May the 19th, Dick Advocaat became the Rangers manager just before this. This is 1998. Not long in the door, he made his first Rangers signing in May the 19th, 1998. Who was Dick Advocaat's first signing for Rangers?
Arthur Numan.
Correct. You are really good at that. Arthur Numan, £4.5 million from PSV Eindhoven. What a statement of intent that is, though, because they signed him early. He was the first signing because he was about to join the Dutch World Cup squad in France. So they signed him, then he went back to the Dutch camp again. He then played in every game for Holland in the 1998 World Cup till the quarterfinals. Remember the famous quarterfinal they beat Argentina? Dennis Bergkamp scored right at the end of it. Absolutely brilliant goal. Numan played in every game for Holland, but he got booked in that game, and that was his second booking, so he missed the semi-final against Brazil. And they lost in penalties. There's every chance that if that penalty shootout had went the other way, we would have had a different World Cup winner in our squad the following season. Because remember, it was Charbonnier and Guivarch ended up joining, and they were both World Cup winners. It could have actually been, if that penalty shootout went the other way, we could have had a Rangers player, an actual current Rangers player, running about with a World Cup trophy and after the final, because I think the Dutch should have very possibly won it. But anyway, so Arthur Numan, I've got it written down, 174 games, 6 goals, 2 trebles, 3 titles, 3 Scottish Cups, 3 League Cups. He was a player, wasn't he? He was. I think when you talk about the highest pedigree left back we've ever had, that's probably him. He did have a few injuries. Remember, he missed the run-in 1999, the game we won at Parkhead with Neil McCann scored twice. He missed that game, so Tony Vidmar played. He missed the cup final, so Tony Vidmar played. But he was the captain the day of the Orange Cup final. A lot of folk don't remember Amoruso didn't play that day, and he was the captain.
Yeah.
And sure, he finished with a Scottish Cup final as well. Remember, he left after the Dundee Cup final when he got offered a bit of a pay cut and couldn't take it, and he ended up just retiring instead of playing for anybody else. So you must have met him a couple of times, I'm sure. He's done a few of these dinners. So what's your Arthur Numan memory now?
Arthur Numan, maybe. First of all, great guy. Really great guy. One of my top 2 Rangers left backs that I've seen in my lifetime. It's him and it's Davie Robertson. Yeah. Arthur Numan probably better in terms of quality, but Davie Robertson was a special player for me, up and down, just a total machine at left back. Part of the 9-in-a-row team, which is so dear to me. So I don't really see anybody as being better than them. But yeah, Arthur was incredible. Really funny guy. Arthur's very, very amusing. Really, really funny. Likes a sing song. And yeah, really, really, really good guy. Favourite Arthur Numan memory. I don't know what it comes into my mind straight away. The goal he scored against Celtic was a real thunderous strike on the. And that day we drew 1 each with them. But overall, I just think it was Arthur Numan's quality. He was up and down that left side all the time. Scored a few against Aberdeen. I remember one he kind of poked in against Aberdeen in a 5-0 victory, possibly, past Jim Leighton. But no, just a quality player, Arthur Numan.
I think that whenever I do my greatest ever Rangers team, I really should put him at left back because he probably was the best left back I've seen. I always put John Greig in it because I've got to put him in my team somewhere. But I think he was class, as you say. The goal against Celtic probably is the memory most people might associate in that 25-yarder at Ibrox. But I used to love watching him against. Remember they had Didier Agathe played up the right. He was an absolute speed merchant.
Aye.
And he used to terrorise left backs up and down. But I always thought Numan was one of the very few players who actually stopped him. That season we ended up winning the treble, I thought that the way Moore and Amoruso handled Larsson and Hartson, and the way Numan handled Agathe were the key to beating Celtic as often, I thought.
Yeah, aye. Agathe was just a menace, wasn't he? Full of pace and not much quality, but pacey, and he was always kind of like, and I don't mean to do a disservice to him. What I mean by that, he wasn't like the most skillful Celtic winger that we've had trouble with. So, but very effective, very good player, very effective. Numan certainly matched him, that's for sure. And then, of course, it was Reina and Peta on the other side, wasn't it? So, Reina, you used to enjoy scalping him a few times. So, yeah, they had a good side, a good attack. But Arthur Numan was key to everything. Just the amount of times he was up and down was incredible. I think that's a big memory of Arthur Numan, what an engine he had on him.
Yep, and if our first signing of this summer is as good as our first signing of that summer, then we're well on our way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finish with the 20th. Now, I've got two things here. One I'm just going to mention, but move on from it. May the 20th, 25 years ago in 2001 was actually the day George Alberts played his last game for Rangers. I'm going to talk about that in a different podcast, so I'm going to park that for a minute. This is one that nobody remembers, but because nobody's old enough. But I want to throw it in just because this is a historical walk down memory lane. May the 20th, 1879. So there you go. This is before my time slightly. Rangers won their first ever trophy. So when we talk about all the trophies Rangers have won throughout history, the very first one they won was on May the 20th, 1879. And it was a competition that no longer exists, but it was quite big at the time, the Glasgow Merchant Cities Charity Cup. The Charity Cup, as it was shortened to. And it was a team that contained some of the gallant pioneers, like say Moses McNeil was in the team, Peter Campbell was in the team, as well as the likes of Tom Valance and all these guys. Quick history lesson. Everybody has seen the gallant pioneers picture, which was from the 1877 Scottish Cup final when they played Vale of Leven. Rangers lost that after 3 games, 2 replays, then lost it. They then reached the Scottish Cup final again 2 years later, which hasn't got a picture associated with it, in 1879. They drew 1 each again against Vale of Leven. But Rangers got a goal disallowed for offside in the game, which they were absolutely adamant should have been allowed. And so angry were they that they appealed to the SFA to be awarded the trophy because they said that they scored a perfectly good winning goal and it should count. The SFA, probably unsurprisingly, sided with the officials of the day and said that, no, the game finished 1 each, your goal was offside, you'll need to play again. So the replay date was given, and when Rangers and Vale of Leven were to play in the Scottish Cup final replay, Rangers were so angry that Captain Tom Valance took his team to air races and they didn't turn up for the replay. Vale of Leven had a walkover and won the Scottish Cup without actually playing. 2 weeks later, Rangers and Vale of Leven played again in the Charity Cup final. They both reached the Charity Cup final. And it was, let's put it this way, a bit of a grudge match. Right? It was played at the original Hampden Park, which became Cathkin, which is where Third Lanark eventually played. That was the original Hampden. Rangers against Third Lanark. Apparently, the officials had all kinds of bother because there was fist fights all through the game. There was players all batting lumps at each other. A guy called... Vale of Leven scored early on, went 1-0 up. A Rangers forward called Willie Struthers equalised. And then, just to show you how times were very much different back then, Rangers' winning goal, the goal that won them their first ever trophy, no one knows who scored it. It just says in the match reports, after a scrimmage beside the goal, the ball entered the net and Rangers won 2-1. That's all it says. No one actually knows who scores Rangers' first ever cup-winning goal. So I don't know if you ever go to the Hampden Museum, the Charity Cup trophy is in the Hampden Museum. It's a lovely big thing. It's a huge, big, ornate trophy. Rangers ended up winning it more than anybody else ever won it, and they won it lots of times, 40 odd times. But the first ever Rangers trophy, if anybody ever asked you the first trophy Rangers ever won, that was it. May the 20th, 1879.
Brilliant story.
History lesson.
That was lovely.
Right, so that takes me to the end of the first week of This Week in History. Stevie, it's been an absolute blast. And by the way, your you are now favourite. If we ever do a 4 lads quiz, and I'm the quiz master, you have just elevated yourself to favourite to win that, because your recall of games is very impressive. But anyway, did you enjoy that?
Thoroughly enjoyed it. I love hearing. Do you know what? I love talking to you about stuff, and I love the story at the end. I don't know if you caught me. I was just smiling all the way through it because it's just such a lovely story. So, and something I never knew. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And do you know what? That's the whole point in this show. And it was absolutely brilliant. I'm really looking forward to it being an addition to the 4 lads roster. So well done, mate. This is all your brainchild, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. So well done.
Good. Anyway, I'd like to invite any viewers to put any comments as to what they think of the show, how they think it can improve, because I'm intending to do one every week through the summer period when there's no games on. And as I say, it will be not just good stuff. There might be the odd thing in it that brings back painful memories as well as good memories. So thanks very much, Davie, for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks very much to our sponsors, Ryan Express, Clydeview, CSD Air Conditioning, Candid, RYDC. Not got my glasses on, I can't see the screen very well. Thanks very much for watching. This has been This Week in History. Until the next time, next week, thanks very much for watching. From Steve and myself, bye for now.
The 4 Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.